Hi. So I don't know about you, in these days of quarantine, I welcome any excuse to shower and put myself together a little bit, get dressed, and just feel like I've got something on the agenda. And so I was working on some writing pieces yesterday, going through some old pieces and working on some new ones. And I came across a piece that I decided I wanted to share. And I posted it on Medium. I'll be putting a link to the article, but I thought I would read it to you. So this is a reading of an experience, another story, a recent travel experience that I had a few months back in Slovenia, and I would like to read it aloud to you today. So I hope you enjoy. I do think that the story itself does contain within it a thread that is pertinent to the experience we are all facing right now. So here goes. Lake Bohinj was the perfect choice for our 6-day sojourn in Slovenia. Quiet, not many tourists, and serene as can be. On our second morning, we slept in, ate a delicious breakfast prepared by our host, then set off to roam the paths surrounding the lake. After wandering a bit, I spotted a quiet little nook by the water's edge, perfect for meditation. Chris was about to leave me nestled in the tree trunks there, when, out of nowhere, a tiny little bird hopped up and sat on a tree branch, just to my left. I greeted him warmly and invited him to hang a while, and that he did. We called him Chester. Chris snapped a few photos of Chester and I before setting off to wander on his own, and I nestled in to meditate for a bit. I felt myself relaxing, and then soon after, my heart opening so wide that it began to reveal all the pent-up fear that I'd been denying for weeks on end. I was scared. Scared because I no longer had a home. Scared of how the journey might change me. Scared it wouldn't change anything at all. And as I sat there, wet-eyed, somewhat limp-bodied, the bells of the church across the lake began to ring. I hadn't even noticed it before, the church over there, and its chimes danced their way across the water and into my ears. And as they did, 2 words drifted into my mind, one right after the other. Scared. Sacred. Scared. Sacred. I was immediately struck by how the order of just one letter could make such a difference, and then a thought arose from this space of wonder. What if my fears are just scrambling the unseen order of things? In my tenderness, this thought comforted me greatly. Chris and I met up again shortly and continued to stroll along the lake path. At a distance, we saw a woman walking a baby goat on a leash. Intrigued, and ever the Capricorn, Chris approached her and asked if he could say hello to her little kid. The goat was shy and wasn't really all that into his advances, so instead, we smiled and waved our goodbyes to the baby goat named Vivi and Lucy, her human. We continued to stroll along the lake's perimeter for a while before heading back to our rental car. In the parking lot, we ran into them again, just as Lucy was guiding Vivi into a Jeep, advertising tandem paragliding. Chris is an adventurer to the bone, so the seed was planted immediately. Lucy invited him to contact her later in the evening if he was interested in flying, and I knew immediately it was a done deal. There was no real expectation for me to join him, but I couldn't shake the itch that I too was being summoned. When we got back to our room, I read almost every review online, and that's when I found it. Cumulus, one of the most highly regarded paragliding companies in all of Europe. Chris made the call and booked a pilot for each of us for the very next morning. I tossed and turned all night long, my mind rehearsing everything that could possibly go wrong. We would be jumping off of Mount Vogel. It's 1,700 meters high. That's almost 5,600 feet and over a mile above sea level. The plan was to take a running leap off the top, jump through the cloud line, and float over Lake Bohinj for an hour or so, strapped to a parachuted pilot who, quite literally, held your life in his hands. It seemed insane to me, a totally unnecessary risk, an act reserved for people much braver than I. Which is why I knew I had to do it. Not for the thrill, not for my bucket list or the Instagram photo op, but because it was an opportunity to transmute my terror into something transcendent. Scared. Sacred. For months, I had been defying my fear in order to follow my deeper impulses, doing the unreasonable because it felt right. Jumping off of an edge into the great unknown, not knowing where I would land and if whatever was pulling the strings above was actually equipped to carry me. This jump was the perfect metaphor for where I wanted to go next in life. When we woke the next morning, there was a dense fog blanketing the neighborhood. We couldn't even see our car outside, let alone Vogel in the distance. After a bit of texting back and forth with the owner, who was extremely patient with our questions, he convinced us the conditions would be perfect upon launch, even offering a discount if we weren't completely blown away by the experience. After it had been decided we were going, I ran into the bathroom to relieve myself. What I was about to do, quite literally, had scared the shit out of me. After an initial meetup and transport via van, we rode a cable car to Vogel's summit, then took another bumpy ride in the back of a beater truck to arrive at the launch spot. Both pilots we had been assigned were veteran flyers. I felt perfectly matched with Clemen. While it was his 26th year of soaring, he had a groundedness about him that made me feel immediately safe. After a few minutes laying out the gear, we were ready to fly. Clemen strapped in behind me. We would be the first to jump, and he explained that it was imperative I follow his cues. Walk quickly when I do, and then run when I tell you, as if your life depends on it. He chuckled at his dark choice of words, and I laughed along as hard as I could to loosen the fear that sat deep in my belly. Then Alan, Chris's pilot, approached us. Alan stepped in front of me to stand between my body and the horizon. He stared me dead in the eye and spoke. Candace, if you hesitate upon takeoff, you will not go as high. And so, of course, on our first trial run, I did just that. I hesitated. As promised, it screwed with the entire operation, so we had to back up and start all over again. Alan reset our canopy behind, then graciously reminded me once again, "You are ready to do this. You must run without stopping. Do not look down. Look straight ahead and sprint as fast as you can." Then, without skipping a beat, he tugged at my harness encouragingly, walked Clement and I back to the cliff's edge, and stepped aside. As if on cue, the wind suddenly picked up. I felt an invisible force filling the chute behind us, tugging at the harness. Clement seized the moment and urgently pushed us onward, chanting aloud again and again, "Run, run, run, run." And this time I did exactly as he asked, and I ran full speed right off the edge of that damn mountain, my fear and my faith marching in time with one another. And then I felt it. Support like nothing I've ever known. Clement invited me to sit back in my harness and rest my weight into the seat in front of him. As I looked out at my feet dangling freely over what felt like the whole entire world, all I could do was weep. I was utterly and completely awestruck. It's just so beautiful, I managed to mutter through my tears. Yes, it is, he replied softly. I think I must have the best office in the world. He invited me to let go of my grips, urging me to lift my arms to the side, bird-like. And just like that, I was living inside of a flesh and blood miracle. I was fucking flying. We rode the wind to another nearby peak, coming so close to it I thought we might soon be goners. Clement explained that we were on the hunt for thermals, pockets of air that promised to lift us higher. And boy, did they ever. We were well above our launch spot in no time. And by some trick of physics I won't pretend to understand, we floated there for another 3 minutes or so, waiting for Chris and Alan to take flight. Eventually, they came soaring nearby with a wave and a hoot before we each set off on individual voyages through the valley above Lake Bohine. Clement and I chatted a bit, And yes, it's that peaceful up there. You can do that. And I learned that he started paragliding back in 1994. He became addicted immediately, soon making a career out of his passion for flight. During the high season, he averages 5 flights per day. He works in various locations around the world, currently splitting his time between Lake Bohine and Cape Town, South Africa. He's an intuitive guide, knew when to speak and when to allow adequate silence so that I could fully experience the moment. The high itself was a bit overwhelming, so I continually had to remind myself to stay present and in my body. I took only 5 or so photos before settling in to savor the ride all the way to its end. As we rode along on invisible currents, my fear slowly faded to a deep calm. A majestic ease fell over my entire body. It was a deep and abiding peace that I had never known. I understood immediately why Clement had devoted his life to helping others usher in such profound moments of grace. After about a half hour, we landed at the far end of the lake shore. Even though we launched first, we came in after Chris and Alan. Chris was able to capture a video of my landing. It was remarkably smooth, Clement effortlessly easing me onto the grass, right onto my bum. I landed like a lit-up ladybug. There were lots of hugs and high fives. Chris and I both raved about the experience. We paid a little extra and snapped some photos with our pilots. Talk about a bonding experience. We were both certain we would do it again if given the chance. It was on that day that another journey began for me. There will always be my life before that jump and my life after. I can't say that I believe every fear is meant to be faced in quite the same way, but I am clear now that for me, facing what scares me, even if it means crossing over the edge of everything that came before, this has the power to wake me up to a deep state of presence and sacredness, connection to life itself. And if you ask me, that's an aim always worth scrambling toward. Thank you for listening. If you made it to the end, I'm grateful for you bearing witness. I will drop in just a couple of photos from the experience at the end of the video so you can get a visual on it. And I'm wishing you the experience of that dual awareness of, even as you face this unknown and the terror and uncertainty that can come up, I hope that you are also able to find some connection to what is most sacred in your life and derive a sense of peace from that. Blessings to you. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.